Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are playing as Brettonia against the Lizardmen on the map Castle Drakenhof. And this match is just incredibly ridiculous. I just got this match and I thought it was an absolutely hilarious what my opponent did here, and it's a pretty cool build that I've never thought of. It's actually like mass Lizardmen cav. So my Brettonia build, I went with something I figured, competitive against Lizardmen. I figured would be decent against Lizardmen. Fanchantress, so nothing too fancy there. Usual Regrowth, Earthblood, Life Bloom, Mist of the Lady, Favor of the Fae, Chalice of Potions, Arcane Conduit, all that stuff. So basically max into healing. A front line that's dirt cheap, 2 Spearmen at Arms and 2 Foot Squires. I actually think Foot Squires are an okay choice, just because they should do okay if my opponent had brought Scars Warriors. In the back, we do have the Regiment of Renown, Beast Slayers of Bastogne. This is actually the first time I took them into a battle. They are basically just Foot Squires, but they've got monstrous melee defense. It's a lot like the Korok's Man Rippers. These guys have 33 more melee defense than normal Foot Squires. Their melee attack's not particularly great, but they do have bonus for charge of 17, which is really solid. So they've got good weapon strength, and 80 armor, which is actually better than normal Foot Squires. They only have 70. So these guys are really pretty solid, and well, hopefully they do well in this match. But either way, obviously, the power of Brettonian comps comes in their cavalry. So, Grail Guardians, the usual bodyguard squad. These guys, although they might not seem that great against Lizardmen because they don't have any AP, or very little AP, they're actually, I think, in my opinion, they're pretty decent still, just because they're immune to Vigor, their melee defense is just so monstrous, and, yeah, they're just so survivable, and they will tear through Sarge Warriors and units like that over time, just because they're so very, very tanky, and a lot of Lizardmen infantry just can't touch them. On the flanks, though, really the main strike force, we do have the Companion of Quenolus on one end. I did decide to bring them because they bring AP to the table, and you really need something to crack heavy enemy armor. If my opponent brought Stegodons, Bastillodons, even Carnosaurs have a decent amount of armor, so having some sort of armor piercing I think is always valuable as Brettonia. Granted, these guys aren't dedicated anti-large, but nonetheless they do have physical resistance. With their really solid melee stats, they should be able to sort of eviscerate heavily armored dino units. 2 units of Grail Knights, providing that sort of shock cavalry support. I still think they're very solid in this matchup. Granted, they don't have a huge amount of AP. It's not even on par with, say, the Vampire account, Blood Knights. But, they're still very solid. They're still immune to Vigor. They've still got physical save, all that sort of stuff. So they're very solid. And their magic damage, if your opponent brings, say, Krokar, is pretty good. Out on the flanks, 2 Knights Errant. And these guys, one of them is the Defender of the Flute of the Lee. I think these guys are actually not bad in this matchup for the simple fact that you can use them to cycle charge the backs of Sarge Warriors, but more importantly, you can use them to catch these annoying skinks. So if your opponent brings a bunch of skink skirmishers, or more likely chameleon skinks, so in this case, they're skink skirmishers, you can commit Knights Errant to them. You don't have to overcommit a whole bunch of gold and money, but especially the defenders will actually tank through that fire really effectively with their silver shields, and they can just mow down those annoying little chaff units. However, my opponent here caught me completely off guard. We did mention the skink skirmishers already, but the line is just a mess of cold ones. A Lord here, a normal Saurus Old Blood. I'm surprised it's not Krokar actually, but a normal Saurus Old Blood with the Horn of Kygor for those buffs, Stand Your Ground, Amulet of Eitzel, which is a huge 66% damage resist, but only for a very short amount of time and only one use. And then of course Foe Seeker, and then just this mob of horned ones. You can see one. I don't even know how many units of horned ones he had. I didn't calculate when I was in the game. You can see it's one unit of 1, 2, 3, 4 units of horned ones, and they are backed by feral cold ones, some cold one riders. It's just a total mess of these monsters units. And just look at horned ones. These are such a gorgeous unit. It's a real pity they have the rampage, because if they didn't have rampage, I would absolutely adore these guys. Either way, the lines are closing very quickly. You can see I'm actually pulling back because I feel that I need to get my opponent into a position where I can get the most use out of my cavalry, pincer him, and pound him from all sides, because I don't want to be fighting around these trees. And so he's immediately piling in. My spearmen are going to take a massive beating there. Over here, the horned ones are actually going to get piled into by the defenders of the Flute of the Lee, who will do very little. Horned ones have 100 armor, and they've got over 5,000 HP. They're an incredibly tanky unit. They're actually, based on testing, they're actually, I think, the third right now after the Blood Knight buff. They've been dropped to 3rd place, I think, as far as cavalry goes, and straight cavalry on cavalry fighting. But they're still an absolutely monstrous unit. And you can see here the defenders of the Flute of the Lee doing their very best, but they're just not going to be able to win. Fortunately, these Grail Knights coming in, and you can see the fight just breaking down so very quickly. Now, I do try to be a little careful. I'm throwing my Knights Errant in to stem the tide because I know they're going to get slaughtered, and what I need to do is pick apart my opponent's troops on the periphery. The Grail Knights can catch the horned ones, and they will beat them, hopefully, especially in Lance Formation. Lance Formation tends to skew battles very much in your favor, and you can see the Grail Knights are going to be laying an absolute whooping on these horned ones, especially because my opponent didn't get his charge off. Over here, the Horned Ones get caught by the Beast Slayers of Bastogne, and Earthblood goes down, which means the Companion of Quenolus will be able to tear through these Feral Cold Ones and then the Horned Ones. And although my Foot Squires are just completely falling apart, the Grail Guardians, of course, true to their defensive nature, are just going to hold here with the Fey Enchantress, not giving an inch. Favor of the Fae goes down on these companions, so they're just going to be able to hack their way through all these troops incredibly quickly. And on the flank here, although the defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis essentially get annihilated or take a huge beating, the Grail Knights are able to get that beautiful charge in there, uncontested, and just crush these Horned Ones. And you can see the Horned Ones are having a really bad time. I do try to pull away with the defenders, so a little bit of a mistake. They're going to take a lot of losses trying to sneak out past these Horned Ones, but I just didn't want them to be tied down here. I'm like, Grail Knights, do your job. Kill them. Let your little friends there escape, but the defenders are just getting snagged by these annoying rampaging Horned Ones, and they're not able to sneak past, so unfortunate. On the periphery, though, now at this point, my opponent's Horned Ones are actually kind of backfiring, because Horned Ones, of course, do have Rampage, like we discussed before, and although they are doing their very best, my opponent did essentially shatter my infantry corps, except for a single unit of Courageous Foot Squires and the Beast Slayers. My infantry corps is essentially gone. So it's basically a cav and cav fight. By this point, the Horned Ones, you can see there's a single unit of Cold One Riders and skirmishers left, but the Horned Ones are largely slaughtered. Over here, I do get a lovely Comet of Cassadora, which is actually really going to nuke these Cold One Riders. I do get an Overcast regrowth on these Grail Knights, which is going to give these guys a 66% ward save. It's 66% physical resist for a little bit amount of time, which is just monstrous. It means they can just grind it out here with the Cold One Riders, with the Horned Ones. Horned Ones, of course, being debuffed by the Fey Enchantress, and slowly but surely whittling away. In the pits, Foot Squires getting shot to death, getting torn apart by Horned Ones, but at this point, we're slowly but surely just surrounding the Old Blood, picking apart, getting the Beast Slayers in there. The Beast Slayers are just doing champion work. The Grail Knights have had a terrible time, honestly. This is about as bad of a build for them as you possibly can face. I think if my opponent had gone with more infantry, these guys would have been a solid choice, I think. But as it turned out, he didn't, and so these guys, although definitely doing some damage on the Horned Ones, are getting really badly beaten up and suffering. But this is probably one of the worst performances I've seen out of my Grail Guardians in a long time. And it's not really their fault. They're stuck here fighting a friggin' Source Old Blood, but definitely some rough stuff. My opponent, though, does lose these Cold One Riders. I'm using my defenders to chase off the Horned Ones. Over here, my opponent does occasionally have some troops rally, like these Feral Cold Ones, but it's really, at this point, it's just a game. And you can see over here the Grail Knights charge in against Source Old Blood. I don't know if he's actually popped his amulet yet, but they do get a charge in on the Horned Ones as well. Beast Slayers are in there. The Beast Slayers, of course, will be doing monstrous work. And I do actually pull the Companions of Quenolus away, looking to go chasing after these King Skirmishers. I probably should just keep them in here against the Horned Ones, but I don't. That's a little bit of a mistake on my part, honestly. The Fey Enchantress is going to come in. She's tired, but, still doing okay. She does a bit of a Dragon Ball Z move here, just dropping that Horned One and then charging into the back line. You can see just exploding dinosaurs and blood and guts falling all over. And the Source Old Blood here having a horrible time. My opponent's King Skirmishers have done very little. Their King is zoned out by spears here. And at this point, it is going to be GG as my opponent's army simply shatters. So, not the most competitive game, not the most amazing display or anything, but I thought it was absolutely awesome that my opponent went with such a cav-heavy army. So many Horned Ones. Now, granted, I think Horned Ones in a straight-up unmodified fight, I think, beat every cav in the game except Blood Knights. Throw Lance Formation into the mix, and I think Grail Knights beat them. They squeeze by. But Horned Ones are definitely actually one of the better cavs in the game, and they're actually pretty cheap for what they do. They cost 1,400 because they've got they got the primal instincts, so they only cost 1,400, which is really solid. That's cheaper than Grail Knights. That's cheaper than the Companions of Quenolus. Cheaper than Grail Guardians. All those units, and they'll trade really effectively with all of them. So definitely a cool unit. I was really surprised that my opponent brought this sort of mass cav build. Honestly, it kind of gives me some ideas. I might try something similar at some point. Not an all-cav build, I don't think, but something with a lot of Horned Ones against Brettonia, because if there's a faction where it could work, I think Brettonia is it. We'll see. Maybe you guys will have the misfortune of seeing me play a mass Horned One build, but definitely I thought this was very cool. I actually don't think this is a bad match lineup against the Beastmen, or against the Lizardmen. It's decent. You have something to counteract enemy skirmishers, you've got something to counteract enemy large between the two Grail Guardians and the Companions of Quenolus, and an okay front line that can hold against lizards between your Grail Guardians and your Foot Squires. And the Fey Enchantress herself is a passable hero. Or Lord. It's supporting. As far as my opponent's comp, once again, it's very trollish, very ridiculous, very silly, but it was cool to see it. Honestly, I don't think 3 Skink Skirmishers are worth the price. I think you'd be better off bringing 2 Chameleon Skinks. It's the same cost, might as well, I think. Honestly, if my opponent had wanted to do like a more competitive build, this actually I think could work. What I'd probably do if I was trying to make this a little more competitive is probably drop the Saurus Old Blood, switch him out for Krokgar. Um, Maybe not even, honestly, with the Horn of Kygor, it's a decent buff for your Horn ones. But definitely try to cram in a caster in here, and try to get some Saurus warriors. Try to get some Saurus warriors in there for a front line. Even if it's a tiny front line, some Saurus warriors, some Saurus spears, something like that could be a huge boon and definitely do you some favors. So nonetheless, great game to my opponent, Lido Manu GP here. I had a lot of fun. I thought this was ridiculous build, ridiculous match, but I thought it was great. So I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed some Dino on Knight ridiculousness. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below. If you have any comments, any criticisms, anything like that, be sure to share them. I'm always looking for ways to improve and advice or inspiration. If you guys want me to display or cast a game with some specific unit, be sure to mention it. I don't necessarily always think of certain units. I don't always go out of my way to pick certain units. So if you guys want a unit shown, if there's any specific faction or matchup you'd like me, obviously matchups are a little hard to get, but if there's anything specific you guys want, be sure to tell me. I'm fairly responsive. I try to get back to you guys as quick as I can. So yeah, I do appreciate you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.